Hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
Wonder Woman 84 is finally here, and we are giving you our non-spoiler opinion.
So finally, after many delays, Wonder Woman 1984 has come to HBO Max and theaters simultaneously. So we're gonna start out with some positive, what we thought was good about this movie.
So this movie, if you are a fan of nostalgia, this harkens back to Richard Donner. You might as well have called it Wonder Woman 84, directed by Richard Donner, because it felt like a Richard Donner type movie. But if that's what you're into, if that's your style of superhero comic book movies, then I think you will really love this. It has a classic villain. It's got some cheesiness to it, but I think that overall it kind of works.
This harkens back to the Richard Donner days for sure. This is what I think a lot of people have been clamoring for with Superman, a modern day Richard Donner style story. And that is exactly what this is. So if you appreciate those Donner movies, this is definitely the movie for you. The dynamic between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, spoilers, if you haven't seen any of the promotional material or any of the trailers for this, that might be a spoiler, but he's been very predominantly in front of all the marketing and everything for this movie. The dynamic between Steve Trevor and Diana Prince is still top notch. That was by far one of the best aspects in the first movie, and it definitely carries over to this movie as well.
Absolutely. And I think even though at moments this movie can be really cheesy, they don't lean too heavy into a lot of the one-liner jokes as we've grown accustomed to with the MCU and then even with Aquaman. And some of the stuff that they use in this, or even with Steve Trevor and Diana, they now have Steve Trevor as a fish out of water. Instead of it feeling repetitive, it feels new and a little bit different. And they don't do too much of it. I feel that they really made it work, and it wasn't over the top annoying.
Of course, Hans Zimmer is back and doing the score for 1984 as well. And that is also a very high point as well. The Hans Zimmer score is top notch, and you expect none the less from Hans Zimmer.
Absolutely. All I have to say is God bless Hans Zimmer. He adds so much to this movie, even in moments where you probably shouldn't be as hyped up for it. He just makes it work from the get-go, from the opening scene. You feel it, and he does such a fantastic job at scoring this movie, and I loved it. And I love him for it.
And the use of Beautiful Lie in Wonder Woman 1984 really brings a lot of weight to a certain moment in the movie.
I think this movie overall had a good balance of lightheartedness and some emotional scenes. It does start off a little bit slow as it's trying to build, but I think the second half of the movie, starting from the second act, really just starts to kind of bring it all together.
The villains in this, Pedro Pascal's Maxwell Lord, or Max Lord as they kept saying over and over again, and Kristen Wiig's Cheetah. The one thing I did appreciate about Kristen Wiig's Cheetah was that it wasn't so simplistic of how everything was going to go down. She actually did get some character development. For a while, we've been making jokes that she seemed like she was going to be another Edward Nygma from Batman Forever, or that one douchebag that thinks he's the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, and also fuck you, Trevor. Or Buddy from The Incredibles. That's the jokes that we've been making, thinking that's where Cheetah was gonna go, and it turns out that's not quite how it works out. She actually does have some significant character development, and you kind of feel for her by the end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they did a great job both with Kristen Wiig as Cheetah and Pedro Pascal. Man, that guy, he can act. I thought he really made his very simplistic villain and kind of classic old school comic book villain. He added a different level to him that made him seem a little bit more unstable, and I really enjoyed his performance. I think additionally with Maxwell Lord, he had a unique kind of backstory and a tie-in with his son in this movie that I was not expecting, and kind of puts him on a different level than some other comic book villains.
All right, now we are going to jump into the negatives, and this is where Shane and I might start splitting off here, because we were talking beforehand, and there seems to be a lot more disdain for this movie on my end than his end, but I felt the writing and how this movie was presented was so sloppy, and the level of cheese within the action scenes. I think this is where a lot of the movie takes some of its major hits. how the action scenes were presented to the viewer pulls you out of the movie so drastically. How they either are shown with either shoddy CGI or green screen, overuse of wire work, or just some ridiculous circumstances that require Wonder Woman to break her attention away from what's going on.
So for me, I put the cheesiness of the action scenes as both a negative and a positive for this movie. I think in some cases it was a little bit too much. Early in the movie, they have a scene where it was a little over the top, but I do feel that it was intentional and the wire work was intentional, and it's trying to harken back to, again, the days of Richard Donner.
Or even Linda Carter. I got some vibes from the Linda Carter days as well.
Exactly. So I think that's where it can be both a pro and a con. In some aspects, yes, it absolutely takes you out of the movie, and the CGI work for this movie being delayed is almost inexcusable. And there were so many moments where it felt like this movie was rushed. Instead of the release date being pushed back, it seemed like the way that you're watching this movie that it was almost pushed up and they had to release it super fast, which was not the case at all.
I will say, though, one positive that we forgot to mention was Cheetah actually does look pretty good. The blending of actual makeup work and prosthetics and stuff like that with CGI, it actually turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Cheetah looked good. I was a little bit nervous, and some of the trailers are kind of like, I don't know. But yeah, they made her look good, surprisingly, because there's some other moments where the CGI is not great, but with her, they made it work.
Like Shane was saying, that first half is quite a bogged down with the very cheesy action, the very weak dialogue, and some of the scenes in general just don't really quite make sense. And it really takes you out of the movie. It's not until, again, spoiler, Steve Trevor shows up that the movie begins to pick up. And that's when you gain what you had from the first movie, that camaraderie between those two. That's what starts bringing this movie back up to a reasonable level of watching. But man, that first half is really tough to get through. And then there's some spots in between. And even the ending, with some of the things that they do, is just ridiculous.
On the first act, to kind of paint a little bit better of a picture, my oldest, she loves pretty much every movie. Any movie that we watch, she absolutely loves it. Aside from Hulk that came out in 2003, we watched that and she couldn't even make it all the way through it. And she said the first half of Wonder Woman 84 was slow and boring. And for her to say that, I was like, wow, holy shit. Then this movie must have been really slow and boring in the first half, because she pretty much eats up anything.
In an article, Patty Jenkins is comparing the word cheesy to real sincerity. And she goes on and on about how people seem to back off on any type of real sincerity in their movie. All the things to Patty Jenkins, if she feels that she added real sincerity to this movie by doing what she did, that's fine. But I think in a lot of people's eyes, and perspective is what counts here, it comes off cheesy. At the end of the day, it's freaking cheesy. While Johnny Bravo thinks he's a ladies' man, he's still a loser. And because you felt you put a bunch of sincerity in it, or put some real sincerity in the movie, I'm sorry, I still think a lot of people are gonna come off as this movie is cheesy. It's outdated in its concepts, and it feels very weighed down with an idealistic message that doesn't resonate with a lot of people.
I think this quote is very telling in terms of what Patty Jenkins was trying to deliver with the Wonder Woman 84 story. She talks about Hollywood shying away from sincerity, and that Wonder Woman really believes in the change and betterment of mankind. If that was her goal, I think she delivered on that. But yeah, some people are gonna love it and some people aren't. And overall, it's really gonna depend. If you have comic book movie goers that appreciate the cheesiness and the campiness of the movie, and you're really able to deliver the message, and some of them are going to take it that way, then great. But you also have to realize that on the other side of that, there are going to be some people who feel that that type of storytelling is better left in the past.
Or on CW. And while I appreciate unconventional ways of ending a movie, which this definitely did, harken back to one of the best unconventional ways to defeat your final boss in Constantine, you also get moments like Doctor Strange, where it's pretty shitty. And this falls somewhere in the middle of that concept. And again, it's a very unconventional way to end your movie, to defeat your major villains and stuff like that. While it works in some aspects, mainly due to the music, it also just seems to fall completely short in any kind of realistic nature of the world. While you can suspend some disbelief on how the world actually works and everything, and think that your character is beyond that realm of realism in the world, there's still people from this world watching this movie. Whether it's being pessimistic or cynicism, I feel this movie just definitely missed the landing when it came to the end of this movie.
I think this is where Matt and I differ the most. And a pro that I forgot to mention earlier was Gal Gadot's performance in this. I think you can see the growth of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in this movie, and her acting ability and the emotion that she brings is really what makes the final act work, along with Hans Zimmer's amazing score. It kind of brings everything together, and it is different, it's unconventional, but I think that's what makes it work for the most part. It can come across a little bit cheesy, and I guess depending on the individual watching it, it's gonna go one way or the other. But I think Gal Gadot, thank you, Zack Snyder, for casting her as Wonder Woman. I think she was phenomenal in this. And in the final battle, when she's trying to defeat the villain, that's exactly what Patty Jenkins wanted. She's someone who believes in change and the betterment of mankind. And that's what Gal Gadot was able to deliver with her performance.
All right, that'll end our non-spoiler review of Wonder Woman 1984. Let us know what you thought in the comments below.
And let us know how you watched it. Did you go to the movie theater to watch it, or did you stay home and watch it on HBO Max? As always, we do have a Patreon if you want to support us, and we have a YouTube membership as well. Thank you to everyone who has joined us on there. We greatly appreciate your support. We do have a website where we have some awesome merchandise that seems to be flying off the shelves lately. So if you want to cop some Comic Movie Marks merchandise, the link will be in the description below.
In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.